Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Our Community Stories. We are featuring College Heights today, and I'm so honored to have our speakers with us and for you all to be joining us. College Heights presented at City Hall last year, and we weren't able to record at that time, so I'm so excited that we're able to hear from them again and hear even more about this community and record and share more after this. And this is brought to you by the City of Durham's Neighborhood Improvement Services, our equitable community engagement team. To learn more about our work, please visit durhamcommunityengagement.org. We'll fix that. And today's speakers are Beverly Barnes Evans and Melva George Regal. They have been they've grown up in this community, they're living in this community, and as you'll hear from the presentation, they know a lot about the stories going on. So I'm so excited to share these stories with you. And again, please, if you have questions during today's session, please use the Q&A feature, and if you have comments and resources to share, please use the chat. Over to you, Melva and Beverly.
Thank you. I want to just get my screen set up for you before I share it. Didn't share. I am sorry, this is a technical difficulty. I'm trying to share my screen.
You had it before. The button you pressed, it looked good there.
Right. Okay. Do you see it now?
It's still in the PowerPoint mode. If you click yep. Mm-hmm.
There. We're all good now.
Yeah, perfect.
That's it.
Perfect.
Good. Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to hear our presentation. My name is Melva George Regal.
And I'm Beverly Barnes Evans.
We're residents born and raised in College Heights and co-chairs of the College Heights Historic District. On January 10, 2019, the College Heights Historic District was approved by the Department of Interior to become a part of the National Register of Historic Places. The decision was made because of the various architectural styles, the history, culture, and most importantly, the residents during the period of 1925 to 1966. The ties to NCCU, North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, Mutual Community Savings and Loan, and Mechanics and Farmers Bank were very important to the neighborhood, and it's very evident of the people who lived in our neighborhood. This is a well-known residence. It's too vast to name, but all of them made a significant contribution to the community. What you're looking at now is a drone aerial view of the College Heights neighborhood. It is comprised of over 130 houses and 9 streets. As you can see, there are many mature trees in the neighborhood. Some of the trees remained prior to the building of homes, while others were planted later to add to the attractiveness of the neighborhood. The video is courtesy of Dr. Charles Johnson, Assistant Professor and Director of Public History at North Carolina Central University. College Heights and North Carolina Central have a long mutually beneficial relationship.
parents and neighbors grew up with Jim Crow laws, which made them depend on each other. And there were so many stories that we could tell, but we just don't have time today. They instilled confidence in us to get our education, go through the fire like they did, and trailblaze a history of our own. They wanted us to be fearless and persevere by their example, and they created a safe space for that to happen.
Now, the boundaries on the map are shown within the dark black outlines that you're seeing here. And College Heights has 5 entrances. The buildings that are grayish in color outside of the background actually belong to NCCU. Now, the building I'm pointing out here it used to be the site for Hillside High School. You know, there were so many memories for most of us who attended the school prior to its demolition. Growing up though, you know, the boundary was down to Lawson Street, which included all the properties I pointed out as being part of NCCU now. There were only a few houses in the neighborhood built in the 1920s and early 1930s. Those houses were not very close to each other, where you would even think of it as a neighborhood. Those owners bought a parcel of land and built their homes. The majority of the houses built to make up the community were done in the mid-1940s and throughout the 1950s. Now, this chart illustrates the occupational makeup of the neighborhood. As you can see, we could get most services done without going outside of the neighborhood, or if we did, we knew a neighbor in a particular profession to go and patronize. For example, in addition to the college professors and school teachers, we had plumbers, brick masons, street graders and pavers, neighborhood grocery stores, painters, and other professions that made it possible to get work done without having to seek people outside of the community or being denied funds by majority banks to enhance our quality of life.
We had 2 super librarians. One was Mrs. Selena Warren Wheeler, wife of John H. Wheeler, who was the first professional librarian for Durham County. And the other was Mrs. Molly Houston Lee, wife of Dr. James S. Lee, NCCU biology professor. And she was the first African-American librarian in Wake County and the founder of the Richard B. Harrison Library for African-Americans in Raleigh on New Bern Avenue. They both organized a non-circulating collection of original Black authors, and Mrs. Lee collected more than 8,000 volumes for researchers of African-American literature and history to be preserved.
Phenomenal.
This slide shows the buildings that are named to honor College Heights residents, and I will tell you about 2 of them while you peruse. Dr. William H. Robinson was chair of the Math and Physics Department from 1938 to 1962, and he created blueprints for some NCC buildings as well as some residents' homes. He was in charge of the war training program at NCC during World War II for war-related jobs, and one of those recipients was my aunt, Inez Suit Jones, a chemistry major, and she was able to have a summer job working on the government's secret clearance Manhattan project with about 1,000 people of various fields of expertise to create the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan during the war. She worked with the government every summer until she graduated in 1946, when she was approached by Dr. Walter Kempner of Duke Hospital's famous rice diet. He hired her as the first African-American food chemist to work directly with him and was paid under the table. She couldn't walk around too much. She had to come in through a certain door in the back. Truly a hidden figure until Duke had a banquet celebration of 50 years of integration where she and others were finally recognized. Another professor was Dr. Ezra Totten, chair of the chemistry department from 1949 to 1975. He was Melba's neighbor and very involved in the neighborhood. He increased the enrollment of chemistry majors tremendously, as well as added a master's and doctorate program. He was very smart and helped to place many of his students in industry, jobs, and academia. He was elected to the New York Academy of Sciences and received many honors, especially for his research in the field of medicinal chemistry, concentrating on the synthesis of cancer-arresting compounds. He was just phenomenal.
Yes. You know, there were 11 buildings on NCCU's campus named to honor College Heights residents. But one former resident of College Heights was Dr. John Hope Franklin, a nationally known historian. He was a professor at NCC from 1943 until 1947. Dr. Franklin has a building named in his honor on the campus of Duke University and a contemplation room at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. And while we're on the subject of education, education was stressed in our neighborhood and expected of the children, even if some of the parents had not been able to attend. It was emphasized that we were born to be successful in professional and civic endeavors. During this period of segregation in Durham, we relied on each other in the community to accomplish our goals. Even though we had textbooks that were outdated, meaning the white schools received the new books and we received their used books, we had educators in our neighborhood teaching us outside of the textbooks and taking us on excursions to expose us to life outside of Durham and how to succeed in it. We read the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer in the 5th grade and learned to speak German in the 7th grade, all the while at C.C. Spalding Elementary School. Also, we were taken to like the Moorhead Planetarium in Chapel Hill, Jamesburg in Williamstown, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and New York City, just to name a few.
Henry McKinley Mashaw Sr.'s house, better known as H.M. Mashaw, was built in 1925. He was the manager of the Union Insurance and Realty Company and owned several parcels of land. His son on the left, H.M. Mashaw Jr., was the first U.S. attorney in the Southeast, a federal judge, a senator, and the longest serving member of the North Carolina House of Representatives. He attended Palmer Memorial Institute Prep School in Sedalia, North Carolina, with Dr. King's younger brother, A.D. Their families became friends, and whenever Dr. King came to Durham to speak, he would stay at their home, and the neighborhood kept it a secret for his safety. The picture on the right shows Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King at White Rock Baptist Church with the famous "Fill Up the Jail" speech.
Yes. Dr. Alfonso Elder was the second president of NCCU from 1947 until 1963. Dr. Elder led the school during the Civil Rights Movement and integrated the school as well. He felt that it was our constitutional right as well as our obligation to protest injustices in the city. Students at NCC and Hillside High School protested all over the city at various establishments. I was one of those high school students. The neighborhood, as well as other parts of the city, was heavily involved in the civil rights movement. Even though adults had to work, they still participated as they could. The teachers at Hillside would send homework to the jail to ensure students were kept on track with their studies. Black restaurant businesses all over the city would send food to the jail every day. I was 14 years old. I wasn't arrested, but I have a daily reminder of that period. A large scar on my right knee from being dragged across Durham Chapel Hill Boulevard by police while protesting at Howard Johnson's restaurant. The Student Union building was named in Dr. Elder's honor.
And my mom, Mrs. Lucy Barnes, an NCCU alum, worked as the program director for the Alfonso Elder Student Union for 30 years.
Yes, she did. Frazier versus Board of Trustees of the UNC Chapel Hill. Now, this is a case of significance because it paved the way for many to follow. 3 Hillside High School students, 2 from College Heights, and lived across the street from me, Leroy and Ralph Frazier, were the first undergraduate students along with James Brandon, to be admitted to UNC Chapel Hill. Now, this was a very big deal because UNC fought their admission all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Their accomplishment was hailed by us as well because they were represented by 3 College Heights attorneys pictured here: Floyd McKissick, here's Hugh Thompson, and John Wheeler.
John Hervey Wheeler's house was built in 1935, and he was among the first to attend NCC Law School in the evenings during World War II, while working as a tailor at Mechanics and Farmers Bank, later becoming the president, a civic leader, a civil rights attorney, and philanthropist. In 2017, Congressman G.K. Butterfield introduced a bill to the joint congressional body to rename the United States Federal Courthouse in Durham after John Hervey Wheeler, which was passed in 2018. The renaming ceremony was held on October 15th, 2019 for his longtime civil rights accomplishment. And it was just a marvelous day. In the picture with Mayor Shule on the right is his son Warren, the first African-American and youngest pilot at 22 years old, hired by Piedmont Airlines, and created Wheeler Flying Service with 11 airplanes. I took lessons on a Piper Aztec airplane when I was 21 years old. He has trained over 100 pilots. His sister Julia was the first female president of Mechanics and Farmers Bank from 1983 to 2000. In 1953, Rencher Harris was the first African-American elected to the Durham City Council. And in 1958, the first African-American on the city's Board of Education. He was a real estate appraiser, had a career in banking and insurance, and also had leadership positions with Lincoln Hospital, North Carolina Mutual, Mechanics and Farmers Bank, and R.N. Harris Elementary School is named in his honor.
John S. Stewart was the president of Mutual Community Savings and Loan and was the second African-American elected to the Durham City Council. Having Mr. Stewart and Mr. Wheeler as heads of 2 financial institutions on Black Wall Street was very beneficial to African-Americans in the city of Durham. Now, College Heights had several executives who worked in North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, including Presidents Joseph W. Goodloe and William J. Kennedy III. As many of you are aware, North Carolina Mutual used to be on Parish Street as well before they moved their offices to Chapel Hill Street. Now, Mr. Goodloe and Mr. Kennedy lived across the street from each other, and they were tall and distinguished men. Mr. Kennedy lived in a beautiful rent-style home where across the street, Mr. Goodloe lived in a beautiful contemporary home that was done in Pepto-Bismol pink.
And it's still Pepto-Bismol pink to this day.
It's, yes, it is. We were introduced to fine arts at an early age, especially in piano. We had 3 piano teachers in the neighborhood. Mrs. Margaret Sharon, daughter of C.C. Spalding, and Ms. Hallie Lawson, daughter of Reverend Andrew Lawson, pastor of Fisher Memorial Holiness Church. Ms. Sharon had an annual piano concert for parents and friends to attend, while Ms. Lawson had had students to compete in the National Piano Guild. Beverly and I were students of Ms. Lawson. Mr. William H. Cole Jr., known as either Lanky Cole or Mr. 88 Keys, was the director of the Merrick Moore High School Band and later supervisor of music for the Durham County Schools. He would teach piano as well as band instruments at his home.
You know, their houses always had classical music floating out of the windows through the air all day long. Mr. Cole's home had jazz coming out through the windows, and just because they had just jam sessions there. Miss Lawson also taught me the clarinet when I stopped taking piano lessons because the Hillside Band would practice sometimes in College Heights streets, and it sounded like a parade was coming through as a child. So I wanted to be a part of that when I got to high school. Now, Mrs. Gwen Tate Haskins was our music teacher at C.C. Spalding School, later becoming a music professor at NCCU, specializing in voice. She studied at several conservatories, including the Paris Conservatory, and was among the first African Americans to sing on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour, the Ed Sullivan Show, and to perform at Carnegie Hall.
Well, also let's not forget down the street from me, we had Butch and Red Grady, who their house was used as the place to rehearse for the local band called the Viceroys. And the Viceroys played at all of the functions, and they played all of the top R&B tunes. So therefore, we might have had our classical, we might have had our jazz, but we had our R&B where it had us dancing in the streets.
We were definitely Martha and Vandellas for sure.
That's right. Some of the social activities in the neighborhood. The boys would play, baseball, basketball, football. A boy lived at a house because just about every house, where a boy lived, there was a basketball hoop there. Now, the girls played jacks, hopscotch, volleyball. This will tell you how old this is. McCall magazine paper dolls, regular dolls, badminton, board games, and play on swing sets. Just about all homes that had children had swing sets. We also rode bicycles and roller skates along with the boys. Now, when it came to roller skates, they had to be union roller skates. Now, birthday parties, everyone's birthday was important, and everyone had a party at their home when there was someone's birthday. Now, we also had back to school parties. We also had weekend parties, which would be held at various homes, especially during the summer, and we would have them in the backyard. Now, during the winter, we had parties as well, but those were only at people's homes that had basements.
Yes, and Melba, during the summertime when it started getting dark and you see the lights in the people's backyards with the red, blue, and green lights, which reminded you of the Dee Dee Sharp song, The Party Lights, you knew it was going to be some action going on in the neighborhood.
On and popping.
That's right. That's right. But the neighbors influenced us so much to do community service that we were Brownies, Girl Scouts, Junior JCs, and the ballerina on this slide at the bottom left is me, practicing in the front yard after ballet class at W.D. Hill Recreation Center, where the girls would also have tap dancing classes as part of our fine arts introduction. When I moved back home, I found my tap dancing shoes in the back of the closet. It was unbelievable. We also enjoyed the W.D. Hill Recreation Center summer camps under the direction of Mr. Leandros Williams, where it was organized with tutoring, arts and crafts, board games, lunch, and swimming twice a day at the Hillside Park swimming pool. Our summers as children were so much fun. The Malloy brothers that lived behind me were the winners of the Durham Soapbox Derby race, with Edward coming in first and John in second place. We were there to cheer them on. Edward went on to the Nationals in Akron, Ohio, coming in second in the nation.
Great job.
Yes, and the ladies also had social clubs in the neighborhood, like the Azalea Club, the Bridge Clubs, and Federated Garden Clubs. There were conventions, competitions, fellowship at each other's homes, and so much camaraderie. And Melba, what did the men do?
Well, the men had social clubs as well, only their clubs were poker clubs and pinochle clubs. Now, I couldn't find any pictures of them playing, those card games, but the parties would be at different members' houses every month with the wives serving them refreshments. Beverly, growing up, children were not allowed to be around adults when they were entertaining. When an adult company visited our parents, we were not to be seen or heard. Maybe that's why we don't have any pictures.
That's true. I remember those days because either you went outside to play or went to your room, but you definitely did not get in adult conversations.
Yeah, some things they need to bring back. That was old school,
That's right. This is a photo of the Algonquin Tennis Club, courtesy of NCCU archivist Andre Van. The main members were community residents and their friends. There were matches where Althea Gibson and a young Arthur Ashe would come to Durham to participate, and Arthur would stay at Biff Henderson's house in the neighborhood. Also in the neighborhood, we had the only house with a swimming pool that belonged to Nathan and Wanda Garrett. Mrs. Garrett was an English teacher at Hillside High School and hosted her own television show in 1973 called Black Unlimited. And she taught neighborhood children to swim in the summers. Her husband, Nathan, was one of 4 African-American students to graduate from Yale University in 1952 and became the first CPA in North Carolina and 65th in the nation. His firm is the oldest in North Carolina.
Now, Mr. Carl Easton was the varsity tennis and varsity basketball coach. He taught geometry at Hillside as well. Mr. Eastland was a disciplinarian who believed in conditioning your body and your mind. Maybe that's why the kids behind his back called him Bear. Under him, John Lucas Jr. played in the NBA, and Bonnie Logan, pictured here, went on and played with the women's tennis circuit. Mr. Eastland was the coach of the infamous 65-66 Pony Express basketball team, who won the state 4A championship, averaging 105 points per game. The team holds 13 records which still stand 55 years later. Unfortunately, Mr. Eastman nor his team were ever recognized by the Durham City Schools or the North Carolina High School Athletic Association for their amazing achievement. It actually wasn't until 2011 when ESPN did a documentary on the team that they received some long overdue recognition.
That's right. What a shame. What a shame. Because he was such a community person. He would drive around in his station wagon and pick up the young boys in the neighborhood, including my 3 brothers, Craig Page, John Lucas, and others. And he would take them to Hillside's track field and have them run, do calisthenics, and play against each other. They were a part of the Durham Open Tennis City tournament, and they would play on Forest Hills courts. The guys would win, but John Lucas was a marvel to see play as a little boy, sweeping everyone off the courts. Coach always had a winning team by the time each group entered high school. This slide shows my brothers and me in the front yard on the left. They were risk takers with about 10 other neighborhood boys in their age range. They played in the woods exploring. There were Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and had a basketball goal in the backyard where about 20 boys would be there all the time, and all our desserts in the house would just disappear. They did odd jobs for neighbors, and one job was for lawyer Hugh Thompson every morning before he went to work, keeping his car clean and shining. They all took turns with that job because they loved having their own money, being so young. Preston is in the front, the youngest, and Ike is on the left, while Joseph is standing behind them. They all attended A&T like our father, and I went to Winston-Salem State.
Yes, and I see Preston's eating cookies in that picture too.
Yeah, he sure is, and he never just stops eating desserts.
And the picture on the right are my sisters and me. My oldest sister, Deborah, is on the left. My older sister, Bernadine, is on the right, and I am in the middle. Our father owned a painting and plastering company with both commercial and residential clients. Our mother managed the family business until she decided to return to school to become a nurse. Being independent thinkers, we attended 3 different HBCUs. Deborah, A&T, Bernadine, Winston-Salem State, and I went to NCCU. Deborah is a former 2-term Durham County Commissioner and currently the Director of Equity and Inclusion Department for the City of Durham. Bernadine was a teacher and principal, and I was a human resources executive.
You know, Melva, this picture just reminds me of how our moms used to dress us in ribbons and bows and sashes and socks with lace and purses. We were just little ladies in training.
Oh, yes, we were. But you know, in our purses, we always had to have a handkerchief, some hard candy, and $1.
That's right. That must have been a code for the moms.
Yeah.
The first
But
groundbreakers.
this slide depicts the residents who were the first African Americans in their field in Durham and other places. It should be noted that every household had achievers. It's just impossible to talk about each of them. As you look over the list of accomplishments, you can see the wide array of professions and why all of them made us so proud.
Yes, we learned from our parents and other households that you had to be prepared to pivot if necessary to thrive. So you always needed to have a backup plan. I'll tell you a little bit about my father, Joseph Barnes, who had gone to embalming school to become a funeral home owner, graduated from A&T in industrial arts, built our house with the help of neighbors and family and friends. He was an entrepreneur that later became the first county building inspector in 1973.
Mrs. Mildred Page was the first African American health educator to work in the tuberculosis control program for the state of North Carolina. After, though, about 2 years, she came to NCC and she taught health and sex education for 62 years. Some of you may remember her husband, Mr. Benjamin Page, a history teacher at Hillside. He would help his dad at the family store, J.L. Page and Sons on Fayetteville Street, as well. Mrs. Page is the oldest original resident in College Heights and the mother of 5 children. One of her sons, Craig Page, whom Beverly mentioned before, is a Durham CPA, and his wife, Wanda Page, is the city manager for Durham. Now, Joseph Beckton. Mr. Beckton was the first director of the Human Relations Commission. He was best known for mediating, people with opposing views. I suppose the most noteworthy meetings of the minds that he, mediated was between Claiborne Ellis, the exalted cyclops of the KKK of Durham, and an Atwater, an activist. The two of them later became friends, and their story is depicted in the movie The Best of Enemies.
Edward Neal Toole was the first licensed electrician in Durham. He did the electrical work for residential and commercial properties, including St. Joseph's Church. He continued working until he was 95 years old and was so well respected for the integrity of his expertise. Alison Duncan was a year behind us in school, and she went to Hampton Institute and Duke Law School. She was the Fourth Circuit's first female African-American judge appointed by President George Bush. She became the first African-American president of the North Carolina Bar Association in 2003 and was voted president of the United States Association of all federal judges. What an honor.
Yes, it was. Now, Maynard Jackson was the first and youngest African-American elected as mayor for the city of Atlanta in Georgia. He was a graduate of NCC's law school. His mother, Dr. Irene Jackson, was a French professor at NCCU. Now, Dr. Helen Gray Edmonds was a woman of many firsts. She was the first female to earn a doctorate from Ohio State University, the first dean of a graduate school, and the first to second the nomination of a presidential candidate, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Her brother, Harry Choker Edmonds, a teacher and coach at Merrick Moore High School, and later a professor at NCCU, lived in the neighborhood too.
The unveiling ceremony. What a glorious day. The left photo shows an homage to our ancestors with the black covering of the Adinkra, symbol of the Ashanti people of Ghana, called the Sankofa bird. It shows the feet going forward while the head looks back, taking the knowledge gained from the past and bringing it into the present. The egg in its mouth signifies the generation to come, giving them that wisdom. The kente cloth scarf border symbolizes wealth, high social status, and cultural sophistication.
Well, I want to interject that the maca covering was made by Beverly. The beautiful golden tassels that are covering the are actually tie backs that Beverly took from her mom's draperies.
Yes, I did my best not to make it look like that Carol Burnett episode where she was wearing the drapes.
You were successful. Our neighborhood network within the community to achieve independent stability. The experience of growing up in College Heights has yielded a high return on its investment, which was passing on valuable knowledge and motivation from generation to generation. When our unique neighborhood was awarded the distinction of being a historic district and listed in the National Register of Historic Places, it was such a great honor, as it is an acknowledgement of our parents' efforts to provide us with a fruitful and happy life. If you want to learn more about College Heights, you can visit the website opendurham.org as well as preservationdurham.org for more information. And your support would be greatly appreciated. It is an interactive site, and I think you will enjoy it. Thank you for listening about our neighborhood, how we grew up and were influenced by wonderful neighbors all around us.
And you know, we were thrilled, and we want to thank the State Historic Preservation Office who contacted us to collaborate with them in writing the submission for this nomination. Also, thank you today for spending your lunchtime affording us the opportunity to tell some of our stories. May you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, ladies. We really enjoyed that wonderful presentation. We have a lot of questions, so we'd like to get started if possible. So the first question is, where is Lawson? Is that Lawson Street on the map? If possible, we can go back to that.
Okay. Okay, can you see the whole map?
No.
I need for the screen to be shared. Give a minute.
Okay, we can move on. Someone asked about the Ashanti Bird.
Okay, this is Lawson Street, by the way, up here, all the way at the top. All the way at the top.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So what was the name of the bird from the Ashanti people?
The Sankofa bird.
Sankofa bird. Okay, thank you very much. What are some examples of the entrepreneurial pursuits in the neighborhood?
Ooh, there were a lot. You know, the entrepreneurial spirit gave the men the freedom to do whatever they wanted to explore. And gosh, we had so many entrepreneurs in the neighborhood, electronics people that, you know, we could take our televisions to when they, were needed repairing. We had brick masons that could, they did the bricks on my house and also the steps. And then they would stop by later on and, I was the one that did those bricks and I was the one that did the plastering in your house. I was the one that painted. So we had, they all worked together in order to thrive. And they would have sometimes jobs in the daytime where they went to maybe the tobacco factory or whatever. But then on the weekends, they were working all around in the neighborhood. Melba, what are some of the other entrepreneurial, there were dressmakers, there were,
there were everything. I mean, if you needed a dress, there were 2 dressmakers in the neighborhood. Also, as I mentioned, my dad had a painting and plastering company. So he also helped within the neighborhood as well. We had neighborhood grocery stores, which is something very rare now. We had, we also had a dentist in the neighborhood, and we had 2 medical doctors, and I'm talking about doctors who made house calls, and just about any skilled and unskilled type of laborer you can think of was there.
Thank you. The next question we have is, what is the name of the lady scientist who sneaked into Duke Hospital to perform professional research?
Beverly's aunt.
Yes. She didn't sneak in. He came to her graduation and offered her that job to help him with the rice diet. That was my aunt, Inez Sue Jones. She just had to come through the back. She couldn't walk around that much. And whenever he was German that left Germany during the war, and he had a very thick German accent. So a lot of people did not understand him as well. But my aunt was able to speak Latin and German and everything. So they got along well. But she was just so isolated that she would get frustrated and quit. And every time she did, he would come back to the house, offer her more money to come back, until she finally said, I can't take it anymore. I need some more Black people in here with me. And he allowed her to hire 2 more chemistry majors that were in her class at NCCU. And I still have a newspaper clipping of Duke newsletter with that in there.
Thank you. Our next question is, when you were gathering the history of your community, did you learn anything new or anything that surprised you that you didn't know when you were growing up?
You know, you view things differently when you're children. And actually, you feel that everywhere is the same place where you live, really. And so, yes, I did learn something new. I learned as far as our elders, a lot of their personal achievements that they were the first to do. And that was something new that I found. But you know, as a child, it's just everyday walk of life. So therefore, it didn't seem anything out of the ordinary as a child. But as an adult, of course, you are able to see the magnitude of their accomplishments.
Okay, we have another question. Is the neighborhood on a National Register of Historic Neighborhoods?
It's on the National Register of Historic Places.
Great.
Yes, by the Department of Interior. We were awarded that.
Okay, I've got a great question. Between 1948 and 1952, the Green Book Travel Guide listed Chautauqua Tavern at an unnamed location along Chautauqua Avenue. Does anyone recall where it was?
Chautauqua, what?
Chautauqua Tavern? From the Green Book Registry?
I don't know anything about
They had a store on there, but not really a tavern. It was a store on Chautauqua Avenue.
But Chautauqua also was not a part of College Heights either.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, our next question is, let's see, what has stayed the same in College Heights?
The houses are the same houses when we did the aerial view. Those were the original houses. So it pretty much has stayed the same. It is predominantly Black. And so not a lot has changed. A lot of the people that we discussed today are no longer with us, but their descendants, several descendants, still live here.
Okay, our next question is, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in College Heights over the last few years?
People I don't know.
Yeah, because the original owners are gone, and you know, once they passed on, some left them to the houses to their children, and then they maybe rented out some of their homes and all, or they sold them. So that's about the biggest difference, you know, now.
Okay, I have another question. What is the Durham Soapbox Derby?
Oh, girl, that was back in the day. Oh, because you know, it was during segregation, and to have some Black boys in the soapbox derby, that was when they created the it's like a race car, you know, and you just on Foster Street they would have this big ramp, and the boys would start at the top of the ramp, and then they would just you know, give the flag, go, and then they would just, it had no brakes or acceleration or anything. It was just from that ramp. So that meant that you had to run those wheels day and night for weeks in order for those wheels to keep moving fast like that to get down to the bottom, which is today now the Central Park area where we have the gathering on Saturdays for the market down there. That's where it will stop, at the bottom of that hill. But to see our neighbors win that was like, woo, that was just phenomenal for us, you know.
actually a it's a go-kart. You know, maybe you understand the term go-kart because that's
Yeah.
what is the actual piece of equipment.
I have another question. Do you have tips for other neighborhoods learning their history?
Make sure that you're the one who's uh, being involved in it. Um, if you have and if you have elders in your neighborhood, I suggest that you talk to them because their memories um, will provide a wealth of information for you, and then that will give you a starting point where you'll be able to go ahead and find um, more information. So you don't really know what trail you're going to go down, but just first communicating with those elders, looking at old pictures, also doing research on your own so you'll know what questions to ask to fill in your gaps. That'll help you out a lot.
Right, because when we were working with the state, and they would sometimes say, well, you know, at this household, we found out that they did so and so. So then we would correct them by saying, no, 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 they were not involved with that. They did whatever, so and so and so. So you have to be a part of telling your own story so that it will be correct.
So if another neighborhood wanted to try and get on um, the register of historic neighborhoods, what type of advice would you give them about going about doing that?
Well, they would first have to contact the state historic preservation office in Raleigh, you know, and they would do the research to see if that neighborhood was warranted of meeting the criteria for the paperwork to be submitted.
So the next question in harmony with that is, why did you want to get this type of recognition?
We owed it to our parents and our neighbors for all of the hard work that they did in just preserving the history of the things that they went through and how they encouraged us to, like I said, go through the fire and trailblaze like they did. And they never gave up. They depended on each other. They helped each other. They were always asking us about our grades and what did we need for any kind of help. They made sure that the youth were being taken care of, and we owed them that legacy that they left us, you know, too.
They were actually great mentors. And so that was
Yes.
one thing that we can say about them. This was a very unique neighborhood where just about I think there were probably about 38 professors, 39 school teachers. There wasn't a subject you could have difficulty and not get assistance. So that's what I meant when I said we work together for the common good, because you have to work together in order for you to really achieve and know. So they were deserving of being recognized. This neighborhood was deserving of being recognized because it is unique.
So I have another question. What is Heights' relationship with North Carolina Central University today?
Today is a good day.
Yeah, we have a good relationship with North Carolina College University, because we Central University, you know, when we had our unveiling ceremony, we had a chancellor to speak. He came with his wife in attendance, and they spoke, and a couple of other trustees and professors were there. So, you know, we always had a close relationship because we had so many professors in the neighborhood that worked there. And when I talked about Alison Duncan being the first federal judge that George Bush had appointed and all, her father was the supervisor of the groundskeeper for North Carolina Central University. He kept the greens verdant, as they say in the school song, the verdant greens. He kept that, and his wife was a librarian, and they encouraged their daughter, and here she was now being the president of all the federal judges in the United States.
But you know, we also no. Go ahead with the next question.
Uh, do you have reunions with College Heights at all?
Well, actually, we are really spread out of all over the United States. And I can say that at the um, unveiling ceremony, now that was a reunion because we got to see all of our friends that we hadn't seen for years because we all had, after school, after college, all over the United States. So therefore, no, there is not a formal, there's never been a formal reunion. But that was one because it was highly attended. And they did fly here, many, for the ceremony.
Right, because they were
Wonderful.
proud of what their parents had done and all. And there was some talk during the reunion that maybe we would all get together and have a reunion, later on, the second generation of College Heights, all the kids get together because we were all friends, and no matter which age group we were in, we were all friends and we knew each other, and it was just great.
I
And
do
they're
have
all
another.
successful. They're all successful, amazingly successful.
That's wonderful. I do have one last question. We may have another one after this. Is how did urban renewal affect College Heights, if any? And was the freeway, the Durham Freeway, did that affect College Heights?
It affected some of the business owners who lived in College Heights. Now, Beverly had talked about Mr. Toole, Ed Toole. Also, Mr. Reed, I think, lived on Masonville at Service Printing Company. All of those businesses are down there on Pettigrew Street in Hayti. And those businesses, they were in the middle of negotiating, trying to get a fair market value for their property as far as moving before the urban renewal. And prior to them reaching a final deal, that whole strip was set on fire, and they never caught the arsonist.
Where is I'm so sorry about that. Where is the historical market or marker for College Heights?
Right when you're going on Concord Street, is on Concord and Formosa, there's a triangular strip of grass, and you'll see the marker there. We're in the process of trying to get 4 other markers installed. The other 4, they are here in Durham. We just need them installed. But one is right there. If you know where Old Hillside used to be,
Yeah.
it's right there in that square. You can see the mark. The picture that's on the screen is that I showed earlier on the screen is what you will see.
Yeah, which is now the Marytown Science Center.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. I'm going to turn it back over to Laura Biediger.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Ms. Melva and Ms. Beverly for joining us today. And thank you to Fallon and Jenny for helping put these together every month. Thank you to our Neighborhood Improvement Services Department leadership. And thank you to everyone who attended today and is watching, and for sharing all of your comments in the chat. I'll be sure to share those with Ms. Melva and Ms. Beverly afterwards in case they weren't able to catch all of them coming across. Coming up next month, we have Merrick Moore. That will be the community that we're featuring at the end of April. We've been working with Benita Green in that community for several years, so I'm so excited to learn more about her community and have her share her stories with everyone. We're still looking for residents from several communities, especially East End, Albright, Gearwood Park, and Stokesdale. We have some plans coming up for June. Will probably be kind of a reunion of the communities that we featured so far in 2021. And we are planning an event probably with DPR, Durham Parks and Rec, in July. So please stay tuned. If you registered for these today on Zoom, you should be registered also for the rest of the ones coming up. And they're normally the last Friday of the month at 12 p.m. You can find all that information on our website, durhamcommunityengagement.org. And again, you can see this was the 9th in our series. We featured the other communities we featured are listed here. They're all available on the City of Durham's YouTube page, and they're also shown regularly on the Durham Television Network. And thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a good month.